Listen to the people, listen to humanity, listen to the parrot, Parrot TV, Parrot TV, Parrot TV, Parrot TV, Parrot TV, Parrot. Listen to the people, listen to humanity, listen to the parrot, Parrot TV, Parrot TV.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you. Hello, welcome to World Inkers Network. I'm Dustin Pickering, and thanks for joining us. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube, please do. We have today Sophie Jupillat Posey. French Venezuelan Sophie Jupillat Posey wrote a poem about spring in the 4th grade and started a mystery series a year later. She's been hooked to creating stories ever since. She studied writing and music at Rollins College and has been mentored by writers such as N. Scott Momaday and Karen Russell. She's had numerous short stories and poetry published in literary magazines since 2014. She enjoys reading and writing anything from science fiction and fantasy to paranormal and mystery novels. When she isn't writing, she is composing music, creating albums, and teaching students in France. She can be reached on Twitter, Facebook, and her website. She is the author of The Four Suitors and the short story collection, The Inside Out Worlds, Visions of Strange. Thanks for joining us today. Sophie, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you.
It's glad to have you on the program. It's wonderful to talk with you. We met at SPOFest, I believe, and that was a really excellent event. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed everyone's presentation, and just give the shout out to James there for his presentation at SPOFest. And so, tell us a little bit about what makes up your stories. What is your process like in writing? When you sit down, do you do this every day, or is it something you come to when you have the mood sits into you, or how does it go? How do you go about writing generally?
It's heavily inspired by the outside world, nature, for my poetry at least. The moon especially, and the night sky really inspires me heavily. For my actual fiction, it can be anything from a memory to an actual conversation I happen to eavesdrop on, or someone's expression. Like anything is likely to set something off in my brain. So then usually if I'm not somewhere close to a computer, I write it down on my phone to write something about later. Sometimes I have also weird, crazy dreams as well, so I use those as inspiration. I'd love to say I write every day, but that's not the case.
Right.
When I have time around my day job and stuff, I write. I outline for my fiction. I outline fairly heavily, and then I use that to throw myself in the work. That's my writing process.
So just kind of incorporating elements from the environment, and it just sounds like you have a little bit of an internal dynamic in your dreams going on that kind of creates a creative, spurs your creativity a little bit. What are some of the strangest dreams you've had that have become stories?
Oh my, lots. I've had crazy, apocalyptic dreams where the world's about to end. Usually it's like water or fire or whatever, and I'm somehow supposed to stop it somehow with these powers I didn't know I had. But half of the dream is struggling to figure out what those powers are and figuring out how to save everybody, that sort of stuff.
Interesting.
I think one of the creepier dreams I had, this was back when I was a teenager. The dream was in my house at the time. and I was going through the house. Everything was dark, and I was looking for something or somebody. And I went into my bedroom, and there was someone sitting on the bed, and her face was like all blurry and stuff, except for her eyes. Her eyes were like these dying stars, for lack of a better word. There's creepy, weird blue light coming from them. And this person just, as the conversation went on, and they're like, "Oh, who are you? And what's your purpose here in life?" And whatever. It was this whole philosophical conversation. But I realized that the person was supposed to be deaf. Deaf was literally sitting on my bed talking to me.
Wow.
And then it took me, like, the house kind of shimmered out of existence, and we were like down in the underworld or something, and they were trying to show me like how the afterlife worked or something.
Oh.
I remember waking up from that, and that went into one of my short stories. I was like, whoa, that really left an impression.
So when you first started writing, it sounds like based on your bio, you wrote more about nature and things like that in your short fiction, and then you moved to sort of a paranormal. Do you still write about nature, or do you just, do you write more, paranormal stuff now?
In my poetry, I almost exclusively talk about nature. In my fiction, I try to incorporate environmental themes heavily. Like, I'm very much into saving the environment, raising awareness about climate change, that sort of thing. So it's very, but a little bit more aggressive in my fiction than in my poetry.
So do you kind of couch it in your fiction? You couch it more like in the themes, and then in poetry, it's more explicit. It's it's like it's just that you kind of have a different frame of using your message is kind of the same, but it switches from the style, that the way your presentation comes is different in your poetry than from your fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So what interests you in environmentalism?
I just think, there's so much talk about preserving the environment and taking care of fauna and flora and everything else, but I don't know, it just feels like there's so little actually being done. There's a lot of blabber and a lot of talk, but nothing actually concretely being done. And it just drives me nuts. So, like, I wrote a story called The Sea, and it's the explicit message is to take care of the oceans and stuff, because so much is, we have so much plastic in our oceans, and so many species are dying, our coral reefs are dying, and if ever all of that goes, then, goodbye to everything else eventually.
Right.
So yeah, I try to focus on those themes, trying to wake people up as best as I can for my writing, and try to offer solutions, actual concrete solutions to fix the situation. But
I guess it's better to have more voices on the subject than fewer. People, the more discussion, at least it's something, but it's not, it needs to transform into action.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you that's interesting that you combine sort of this paranormal with environmentalism. Like, when did that start for you?
A few years ago, I think, as I kept having, it's one of those, I told you about the apocalyptic dreams. My dreams were about that. So for years, I kind of tried to wonder, like, what was the message behind those dreams? And then I slowly realized that it was my anxiety about seeing what's going on in the world, and nothing's really being done. And I think it's my brain trying to work through for what's happening. So, like, well, if I can't fix it in real life, I can try to fix it in my fiction. But yeah, that's fairly recent, like only the past 5 years, something like that.
Okay. So tell us about The Four Suitors. What is that? What is the basis of that story?
The Four Suitors was so the protagonist is this really spoiled princess who has always gotten what she wanted, and is just really unhappy at the idea of having to get married, even though her parents insist and everything. So she was inspired by some of the brattier kids I've had in my classrooms, because I'm also an elementary teacher, and some of the tantrums and stuff you get to see is pretty priceless. She was also inspired a little bit by my adopted mother. She was always like, "Oh, I had so many beaux back when I was younger, and She kept talking about how at one point she had like 4 boyfriends at the same time, etc.
Mm.
And at the time, it just kind of made me roll my eyes.
Yeah.
And slowly those two things kind of mushed together, and I was like, oh, I got it. I can write this story about this awful princess who really thinks she's the hottest thing on 2 legs. And she's not really. She has so much to learn, so much she's ignorant of. But I wanted a redemptive arc for her in the book. Right. So I put her in this complicated situation that tests her mettle, and she has to grow up a bit.
Interesting. That's a fascinating story. So it's kind of a spoiled brat that learns over time to to develop a little bit of some character, and understanding of people.
Yeah, She has to work with these 4 suitors. There's a necromancer, an astronomer, philosopher, and an artist. So 4 very different personalities. And of course, she hates them all at the beginning.
Yeah,
she does her best to sabotage them all, but they stick around because that's their job. And so she has to learn how to work with them and learn to see the world through their eyes too.
That's an interesting arc to work with. I mean, I would ask more about the story, but then you'd give it away, and then no one would read it. So, but that's fascinating. I definitely would suggest people to pick that up and take a look at it. So you mentioned that you teach young people. What else can you learn from teaching that for as far as your writing goes? What else have you learned from your students and about writing?
Basically, well, already as a writer, as you know yourself, like being a writer is all about putting yourself in other people's shoes. But I like to think I'm an empathetic person, and I can easily put myself in other people's shoes. But there's always, I don't know, personality types or people who've gone through experiences that are completely at odds with what you've experienced, for example, and you don't think about how that affect that person's life, how they see the world through a certain lens. So over years, I've had a few students who, through their behavior or hobbies or whatever, kind of open my horizons a little bit. Open my eyes, like especially when I was teaching special needs kids at a certain point. So we had a lot of kiddos with cerebral palsy and autism, and a lot of nonverbal students, and all sorts of disabilities and stuff. And yet, despite for what were for some crippling disabilities, they managed to function and thrive and just keep on going. That really stuck to me, like the resilience of these kids, and sometimes the humor some of them had, the way they interacted with their peers and just enjoyed existing, if that makes sense. Like, and any little thing brought them major enjoyment, that sort of stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah,
you learn from such things that that life is precious, and even even if you have a disability, you can still just be full of joy and happiness, and it's not really it's not something that should hamper your ability to enjoy life.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned in your bio you're also a musician. I'm curious what kind of music you make.
I make mostly, like I say, neoclassical. The classical music kind of died with the oldies, but mostly neoclassical. I've been launching myself more into jazz. My training was purely classical, but I've been trying to branch out. I do some world music as well, Celtic and various types of Asian music, that sort of thing. It's kind of all over the place. I try to experiment, like with my writing. I try to experiment with my music, try new things, new instruments.
Right. It's branching out into like the unknown as part of what the writer, the writer's occupation is about, or the artist in general, trying to be innovative and find your craft in different places, and go into the dark zones, and the places you're not familiar with, and expanding your reach. And that's interesting, so you're trained, you're classically trained musician and also a paranormal writer. That's pretty fascinating, actually. A really interesting combination of talents.
Thank you.
So when you make music versus your writing, do you find there's a different process, or how do you sort of, I guess, multitask there, switch from music to writing?
It's how to explain. It's a little complicated because sometimes I feel like both come from the same sort of inspiration. but sometimes it's also completely different. Sometimes like they work together, like I get a story idea and I have like the music in my head in the background. Sometimes it's really symbiotic like that. Sometimes it's the other way around, like I get a melody in my mind. Sometimes it's like just like a piano piece, because that's the instrument I first learned was the piano. Sometimes it's a full-on orchestral thing going on in my head. And then from that, I usually go to the piano and flesh it out, or use my software, which helps me put like all the instruments of the orchestra in. And from there, a story kind of goes through my head as I'm writing the music. But yeah, it's strange. Sometimes it works together. Sometimes it's a completely different process.
Cross loops.
Yeah, exactly.
That is interesting, because it's. I think the literature, like especially poetry for me, and music are very compatible arts. It would be interesting to see if you would make like an opera based on one of your paranormal stories or something.
Oh my!
Have you ever thought of doing something like that?
No, not opera. But I did think about. I actually did. I wrote back in, what was this, 2017. I wrote this magical realism sort of adventure prose poem. And throughout it, I was heavily thinking of like Spanish themed old world music. And I kept having these ideas in my head. They're all like mostly guitar based. And I ended up actually creating an album that went with that prose poem. So every scene, every major scene and stuff had a specific song that went with it. So yeah, it wasn't pure poetry, but it was close.
Oh, interesting. So if someone wanted to hear your music, where would they find it?
They can find it on YouTube, or on my channel, or on Spotify.
Okay, that's wonderful. I'm just really impressed with your range of talents. I mean, I play guitar. I taught myself to play guitar, and I write a lot of stuff, but I never trained formally. I'm not classically trained or anything. I just like to beat around on the guitar a little bit here and there. But it's fun. Music is fun, and I think, do you find that there's some maybe some like intrinsic similarities between the writing process, as we mentioned, and actually making music as well?
Yeah, like well, the sources of inspiration can widely differ, of course, but I think for me, the heavy similarity is the way I start and complete something. Like I said, I'm a heavy outliner. In my writing, I kind of do the same thing with my music. I start with a main melody, because that's the first thing that usually pops up in my head. And then I work and work and work and work and work and work. And I try to find the perfect structure for the song. So yeah, I usually have several different drafts, unless it's a one-time fluke where it comes out perfectly, but that's really pretty rare. But yeah, I usually go for several iterations of a song, then I come back to it a few weeks later and I'm like, oh yeah, here's what I could do to improve it, just like I do with my writing. It's like, this is this element that was missing or whatever. So yeah, in that sense, it's fairly similar to my writing process.
When we talked about environmentalism, does like the political life in France, does that ever kind of trickle down into your art?
So far it has not.
Okay.
Not yet. We're only
kind of inoculate yourself.
It will come, I'm sure, but it's too soon yet.
Yeah, I mean, I know that France is very different than the United States in a lot of ways, in terms of like their approach to environmentalism, and I think we're all trying to combat in certain ways this ongoing problem of climate change. And I know in the United States we have a lot of climate change deniers. Like there's a lot of them, and I don't know if that's true in France as well.
Well, there's always deniers in every country. That's for sure. I feel like it's less. Definitely. I feel like France is in fact actually doing more concretely, like even in the schools and stuff, like the way they teach about like recycling and preserving the planet and all that stuff is much more in depth, and yeah, like the kids are, even young kids are very much aware of the problems and issues and how they can help in their own little way. That's definitely something that took me aback in a good way here, as opposed to the States.
United States. Yeah, it's a little more I don't know, conservative here, I think. We're going to take a brief break, but we'll be right back with some of your fabulous work.
Okay.
America Open Market. Having some trouble? America Open Market. AO Market. The best digital market for humanity is a free, multilingual, borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. Comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity. Welcome back to World Anchors Network. I'm Dustin Pickering, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel and you're watching, please do. We have Sophie Jupillat Posey with us today, and she's going to read some of her wonderful work. If you want to read some poetry or some short stories, go ahead and get good at it. Let's hear some of your fabulous work.
Okay. So I thought I would actually read a little bit from my short story collection, The Inside Out Worlds, Visions of Strange. I actually just happened to get the paperback version just a few days ago.
Oh, wow. Fresh off the market.
Yeah, it's nice and new. So I figured I may as well start with the sea, because we talked about it a lot during the interview.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. How much time do I have to? How much can I read?
5-7 minutes, maybe.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the sea, part 1. I am dreaming again. I am walking barefoot along the ocean side, wearing pants that miraculously don't get wet. I realize I am 9 years old, and I am splashing water at my sister. The sun is at its zenith, scorching our backs and our scalps. We take turns splashing each other, and I reach out for the dilapidated sneaker we are using to collect seashells. I throw in seashells whose names I don't remember, and I look up to see jolly people running into the surf, screaming their heads off. A few of them have candy wrappers in their hands, and just drop them into the water. I sigh sharply as the waterline suddenly shifts from lapping softly at my feet to roaring halfway across the beach. I have suddenly been transported onto some nearby dunes, and I can see how high the tide has gotten. I stare in consternation at the people in the water, still laughing and talking and playing, though they should be underwater and drowning by now. Miraculously, they still bob on the huge waves. I back away, thinking to myself how stupid these people are. Can't they see the danger? They must go, now. The tsunami will come, as it always does, and it will destroy everything in its path. As if listening to my thoughts, the waterline gets closer to me, and I back away, dread churning in my gut. I am an adult suddenly, dressed in a business suit. The sky is darkening, the previously bright noonday sun now a leering sunset. The sky a red-veined eyeball, leaking shades of gray. I race away from the beach, passing by tiki bars filled with laughing drunk teenagers and incoherent snowbirds. My feet slide as I transition from sand to cement, and I run to a hotel which seems as familiar to me as the palm of my hand. Its sleek, fancy facade glitters red as I rush in the entrance, past an astonished bellboy and oblivious guests. I post myself in front of one of the glass panes and look out at the sea. I can hear the sea's infernal cries through the glass, panting and hissing like a cat in heat. I look around in bewilderment. Can no one hear the approach of impending doom? Don't hurt these people. They don't need to die. The roar becomes louder, and I see the white crests of the waves approaching, the maw of the tide advancing, darkening everything across its path. Please recede and leave us all alone. I love you, sea, and you have been my companion since I was a kid. The sea, that merciless bitch, keeps advancing, and I tremble. Of course, she picks up on the B word and advances furiously. I can smell the foam in the brine. Nobody is laughing anymore. People are shrieking and rushing around. I can't see the sky anymore. It's a watery hell disguised as heaven. Maybe flattery will work. You are a formidable dame, sea. Your power is astonishing, but you must control it and not kill us all. Why? She asks, her roar so fierce I can barely make out the question. I want to answer her, because... But now the tsunami is directly above us, and I close my eyes. I cannot think of anything. I am deafened, and the world is dark. I can feel the impact of the water crashing on the hotel, water bursting like a disemboweled force through all the windows and doors. Glass shatters everywhere. My feet are getting wet, and all at once I am picked up and thrown by a cold, cold, violent arm. The sea has slapped me in the face with death. I wake up, shaking. I put my hands on my knees to stop the tremors. I felt my death coming, and there had been nothing I could do. So powerless. I stand up, groaning as my hands come away, wet. The skin is pruny, and I smell like salt. The sheets are soaked, and a puddle is forming on the floor, spreading into the rug. The trickle of a pooling water is maddening. This is the reason I have barely any furniture in my bedroom. My messes would ruin everything in a matter of days. I feel chilled. My pajamas are sticking to my skin, gross and cold. My eyes are burning like I've been swimming. The same old shit. Why, oh why am I cursed with this? Why can't I have peaceful dreams of going for a swim and hunting seashells, or snorkeling contentedly? Why does the sea in my dreams always seem so set on killing the human race? No, instead when I dream, I fear the rising of an ocean front, and the annihilation of my world as I know it in a watery apocalypse. I've been having these strange dreams as far back as I can remember. Not just the usual flying, losing your teeth, being chased sort of things, but intense dreams that almost always follow the same pattern. Dreams where I am at the seashore, the sea is raging, and she is out to obliterate the world for no apparent reason. I hate those. They leave me shaking hours later. They make me feel something other than crushing boredom. Fear. But fear never truly goes away. It is the stepsister to my apathy. When I was a kid, my parents and sister thought I wet the bed, but I didn't smell like pee, I smelled like the ocean. None of them ever caught on to that. I never insisted on that point either, because I didn't want them to be stuck with two kids who had something wrong with their heads. Don't get me wrong, I had ambitions as a boy. I wasn't always this empty. I guess in our society that's a good thing. Back then I was a model kid, doing my homework every day, running to the TV and watching National Geographic specials and MASH with my dad when I was alone. When I was done. I was even nice to my sister. My favorite class was when Mrs. Walker talked to us about the natural disasters. I loved them all, from the earthquakes to the hurricanes, the formidable forces of nature at work. Back then, I didn't fear anything. That was before my sister's diagnosis. That was before her, Ciara. Having those crazy ocean dreams while sharing a bedroom with my sister didn't exactly help. She couldn't understand why sometimes the floor would be sopping wet. Thank goodness we didn't have bunk beds. It wouldn't have helped either if I told her that the water would whisper to me, or refuse to completely come off the sheets, only doing so after much coaxing and hair pulling. But I think my secret was safe. My sister never caught on to my problem, even though I'm not sure my waking up soaking wet all the time didn't mess her up further. My dreams are the main reason I don't have women come over for romantic encounters. Nope, it's not the emptiness, just the fear that I will sleep with a woman and dream, and my dream will drown her with proof of some insane reality. I don't need that drama in my life.
Very imaginative.
Thank you.
Quite interesting. And that was based on an actual dream you had, or?
Yes. Yeah, it's a recurring dream like the character had.
That's a fascinating story. I especially think it's interesting that one of the things that I felt was implied in that was sort of an harmony of the inner and outer world. You know, like you're in like there's a way to kind of navigate, I guess you could say, like almost a mystical approach to environmental issues. Like, if you have a harmony in your inner world, then you're more likely to embrace that harmony of the outer world kind of thing. Like I saw that some of the beginning of that about the sea and, talking with the sea, and that was interesting.
Thank you.
So what other kind of themes do you address other than environmentalism, and dreams? Is there any other kind of themes in some of your work?
Yeah, I talk a lot about death. It's on a happy topic.
Right.
I talk about
It's life.
About death, whether it's in nature or the death of human existence or whatever, quite a bit. Reincarnation as well, and family.
Mm-hmm.
A lot about dysfunctional families, because I grew up in one. I also try to balance that. I try to balance those unhappy fictional stories with stories about happy and healthy family dynamics, usually with grandparent figures, that sort of thing.
How would you say that your particular fiction and your poetry is contemporary to the issues that are occurring in the contemporary world?
I'd say fairly contemporary. So, I mean, it's heavily filtered for me, obviously, and my perception about the world, but I think everybody can sort of identify with dysfunctional families or climate that's going to pot, or the fear and anxiety about death, that sort of thing. I think those are all kind of more universal themes that everybody can sort of, I'm sure, has wondered about at some point or another. I think that's something I think that can create a good link with readers.
Do you find that you're from Venezuela, but you're living in France, and do you find that there's like a difference in between the nationalities in terms of the arts? Like, is there a different style or approach?
There is. Sadly, I'm not in a good enough position to say, like, between the French and Venezuelan. I only lived like the first 2 years of my life in Venezuela, and I only came back afterwards for brief visits, but it's very, very hazy. So, I mean, music-wise, for example, like the music over there is much more animated, energetic. The instruments are much more varied, but they're different too. Like, but like other mediums, I'm not really sure between France and Venezuela. Sorry.
Quite all right. The question I think to ask sometimes when people have differing nationalities or they've been traveled a lot, I ask a lot of times whether they see there's any differences between culture and the people and how they embrace the arts. It's an interesting question to pursue. So, what ways do you I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, market your arts and market your work to an audience out there?
How to say this politely? I'm kind of figuring it out. What I've been trying to do is using my social medias, like Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, to try to reach out to people with similar interests. I try to promote and help other indie authors and stuff. We try to boost each other and reach out to readers and stuff. But honestly, I'm so not a marketing and business person. So
it's not easy. It's not my strong point either. That's that. I mean, as artists, you like to express, and that's they say that the easy part is getting the book written and produced, but then when you have to go out and promote it and get it out in the world, that's the tricky. That's the hard part. Sometimes it's better just to hire somebody.
That's what it feels like. It's also you feel intimidated too, because there's so many amazing, talented people out there. It's like, how am I, just little me, how am I going to stand out and appeal to someone? How is my book going to specifically appeal to them and interest them and keep them hooked? Just that sort of thing.
I think is the most unique aspect of your work as a whole.
My most unique aspect. I think because of what we were talking about earlier, my love for poetry and my love for music, and my love of languages, which kind of also factors in. Because I think of a world in sometimes 3 different languages all at the same time. I think it gives a certain depth to my works and musicality, for lack of a better word, to my prose that I think is a little unusual, especially in the genres that I write to.
Interesting. So what would you say in conclusion to the program, to our audience and to fellow writers and musicians or whoever may be viewing Creative Minds? What kind of advice would you impart to them?
I would say, as cliche as it sounds, to not give up. That, you know, even if your idea seems really, really stupid in your head, it's your idea. And even if other people may have thought of that same idea, the way you interpret it will be different. I'm going to use a simple example, but I give a theme to my kiddos. And I say, here's a theme, here you go. And every single child's artwork is going to be completely different. So that's what I think of to myself when I'm like, oh, maybe I'm accidentally plagiarizing something, or this book is too similar to this other book or whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. As long as you interpreted it and make it different enough, it's fine. And I think, you know, the fear of not being perfect, I think needs to go in the trash. We hold ourselves back so often thinking, oh, this is not good enough. And, you know, maybe I shouldn't put that out there, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yes, you don't want to put absolute crap out there either, but the goal is to just keep working on yourself and your craft, and it will get there.
Wonderful. So would you like to give any shout outs to friends, family, supporters of your art?
Sure. Yeah. So I think we did it earlier, but I really do just want to give another shout out to James and SPOFest, to Rick and Judy and Linda and Romeo, and I'm forgetting so many, but you know, you guys know who you are. My SPOFest family, you guys are awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Shout outs to my family in America and France and Venezuela for supporting me throughout my journey. And to my writer friends out there, so like Kyle, keep working on your fantasy book. Roxanne, keep working on your music and your writing. You will get there. Fran, keep plugging away and improving your craft. Those are the top 3, but any other of my friends who are poets and memoir writers or screenwriters and whatever, just keep plugging away and working on your dreams.
Well, thanks for joining us today. And if you have any other, you know, friends or some people that you know who are also creatives, you know, send them our way. We'd love to interview them, get them on the show.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I have a couple in mind.
Okay, great. I think you're wonderfully talented, very interesting, and I like your scope of your, you know, of all of the different talents you have. I think, and especially, I think you said some great things about the environment and environmentalism, and this has just been a really good discussion. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sophie.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
You're watching World Inkers Network. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and like and share our content. And we would love to have you on the show sometime. And then we also love some donations. Any little bit you have, you know, would support our programming at paypal.me/nyparrot. That's paypal.me/nyparrot. And any amount is good, you know, and we want to continue to make this programming as accessible as possible and expand our network. So please do feel free to donate if you're out there watching today, and or you've watched the show and you enjoyed this program. You know, share it with your friends and family and other creative minds, and get them on the program as well. You can get in touch with me, Dustin Pickering, at New York Parrot Literary Corner at NewYorkParrot.com. I'm stumbling over my words today, slightly drunk, not quite, not really, I'm just kidding. But, you know, if you guys out there watching, you just share our content. You can support us that way. If you're not interested as much in donating or, giving us some hard-earned cash. I know that's hard sometimes. You can subscribe to our channel, share our content. We have over 1,000 subscribers now. So thank you to all of our subscribers. Thank you so much. And you can support us financially at paypal.me/nyparrot. Thanks for joining us today. Sophie, go back and watch that interview if you missed any of it. It was a wonderful discussion, a lot of interesting points made. And Sophie's a fabulously creative artist. And just get in touch with, buy her books and read, do some reading. And remember, have a great afternoon. Get some writing done. Have a great afternoon. Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a